Hello. I'm going to be doing the Torah reading for Chukat, which is in the book of Numbers, chapter 19. This is the first reading. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, and here we go, we have Aaron and Moses together, Moses and Aaron mentioned together. So the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, This is the statute of the children which the Lord commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and have them take for you a red, perfectly red, unblemished cow upon which no yoke has been laid. So this is a perfectly red-haired colored cow that has never been worked. And you shall give it to Eleazar the Cohen, and he shall take it outside the camp and slaughter it in his presence. Eleazar the Cohen shall take from its blood with his finger and sprinkle it towards the front of the tent of the meeting 7 times. Now, first of all, this seems to be only a one-time thing because even though it's an eternal commandment, Eleazar the Cohen lived at a very specific time. So I'm guessing that any Cohen in the future could do this as well. Eleazar the Cohen shall take from its blood with his finger and sprinkle towards the front of the tent of the meeting 7 times. The cow shall then be burned in his presence, its hide, its flesh, its blood, with its dung he shall burn it. So again, we definitely know how to burn animals. The Cohen shall take a piece of cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson wool and cast them into the burning of the cow. He's making a big mixture. The Cohen shall wash his garments, bathe his flesh in water, then he may enter the camp, and the Cohen shall be unclean until evening. So this process makes him tamei temporarily. The one who burns it shall wash his clothes in water and cleanse his body in water, and he shall be unclean until evening. So here this does leave open the door that it doesn't have to only always be Eleazar a Cohen, because clearly Eleazar Cohen does not live forever. Verse 9, a ritually clean person shall gather the cow's ashes and place them outside the camp in a clean place, and it shall be a keepsake for the congregation of the children of Israel for sprinkling water used for cleansing. So this is what it uses for when they speak about cleansing, talk about for tuma mate, for ritual impurity or spiritual impurity that comes about with contact with a dead body. Now we haven't had this ritual for thousands of years, so the Talmud says, I believe, that, and I've had people tell me this that seem like they know what they're talking about, that we're all tamei mate. Everybody is coming because it's permanent. Without this red heifer ash mix, without this prescription, nobody could ever get out of being tamei met, the ritually impure from touching a dead body. So that would be everybody, because I touch it. Let's say if somebody touches a dead person and it's on them, this tumot, this ritual impurity, spiritual impurity, and they touch me and I get it. So even if I don't touch the body directly, it passes from one person to another nonstop. The one who gathers the cow's ashes shall wash his clothes, and he shall be unclean until the evening. It shall be an everlasting statute for the children of Israel and for the proselyte who resides in their midst. Anyone touching the corpse of a human soul shall become unclean for 7 days. On the 3rd and 7th day he shall cleanse himself with this cow ash mixture, so that he can become clean. But if he does not sprinkle himself with it on the 3rd and 7th day, he shall not become clean. Whoever touches the corpse of a human soul which dies and does not cleanse himself, he has defiled the Mishkan of the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel. For the sprinkling water was not sprinkled on him, so he remains unclean, and uncleanliness remains upon him. So we talked about this whole cutting off, the soul being cut off from Israel. That's been 2,000 years. Every human being is in this situation. So what? All our souls were cut off from Hashem. But what about once your soul's been cut off from Hashem? So how is it that all these other mitzvot that also cut off your soul from Hashem? So what does this really mean that your soul is cut off from Israel? What does that really mean? Is it permanent? Because there's other mitzvahs, there's other things you could do that could cause the same thing, getting your soul cut off from Israel. clearly these verses are all spiritual, and we don't fully understand them. We don't know what the nature of the soul is. This is the law. If a man dies in a tent, anyone entering the tent and anything in the tent shall be unclean for 7 days. Any open vessel which has no seal fastened around it becomes unclean. Anyone who touches one slain by a sword or a corpse or a human bone or a grave in an open field, he shall be unclean for 7 days. They shall take for that unclean person from the ashes of the burnt offering, purification offering, and shall be placed in a vessel filled with spring water. So this would really be a good way to prevent wars, right? I mean, like if you're out there in a battle, like you're for sure going to touch a dead body, most likely. Or, you just walk around Israel, you're going to come across potentially a human bone or a grave if you're digging in archaeological grave sites. So you're going to be unclean for 7 days, but since we don't have this red heifer, we can't get out of that, as I mentioned before. So you might say this is trying to prevent people. Now, we do know that bodies put off people can become contaminated physically from dead bodies. So that's why you cover them with lye and you cover them you try to cover them up really quickly, try to bury them quickly, because dead bodies they could actually spread real disease. But here we're talking about something very spiritual. Okay, that ends the first reading.